Hey, hello there, guys. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Electric Avenue's YouTube updates. Coming to you direct from the store every week. I try to keep up on these as much as possible, and I don't know, I've done okay with that, I guess, but a couple times I'm a little late, and people are like, "Is everything okay?" Um, so far everything's fine. Big week last week. This week, March 1st, 2024, I'm giving you the updates. Last update, the last 20 minutes or so, I gave you sort of a highlights rundown of Record Store Day list. Just sort of a brief. There are so many, there's almost 400 titles, and there'll probably be a few more by the time that's done. So it's a lot to cover. And so I wanted to go over that. I wanted to mention too, there was a late addition, which I maybe mentioned in the last video, that Olivia Rodrigo and this guy, Noah Kahan, his album Stick Season, which is sort of blown up in the Americana world and pop world in the last few months. The two of them have a split 7-inch now coming out on Record Store Day. One side is Olivia, the other side is Noah. She's covering his song Stick Season. He's covering her song Lacey. So I think that should be a pretty big title. The other one that was announced yesterday, which is kind of out of left field, was the Record Store Day Ambassador of 2024. Da 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 da. Kate Bush. What the? What year is it again? I'm like, if you'd asked me 15 or 20 years ago, do you think Kate Bush is gonna be the Record Store Day Ambassador in 2024? I would have been like, what's Record Store Day? You really could not have seen that one coming, and the fact that she's doing it now, that doesn't mean that she's going to be making a bunch of appearances, that she's going to be releasing an album. I mean, this is sort of like we're talking about a musical hermit in a way, right? So she has released things, but we're going close to 10 years again. And if she didn't make an appearance while Running Up That Hill was sort of exploding, I can't imagine. She barely gave any interviews or quotes from that. And I don't think she appeared on a stage anywhere to accept any kind of award or whatever. So, such as it is, the musical reclusivity lives on. And but it's cool that she's going to be doing this, and they are releasing a 10-inch picture single for Eat the Music, her song Eat the Music, which was a pretty cool song, kind of islandy sounding, from the early 90s. And I guess it's some sort of single version that maybe is a little different. Anyway, that's cool. It's sort of a way to commemorate Kate this year. So can't think of a much better artist to commemorate, but I sound like she's passed. She's not passed, so thank the Lord. There could always be new music. Who knows? Maybe she's like Prince, has vaults full of stuff that we just haven't heard yet. That is highly possible. But anyway, whether or not she wants us to hear it is another case. So let me get to new releases for this week. I usually start with the box sets. So the first one today, or the only one really, is Violent Femmes, their self-titled album, expanded to a 4-record box set. It's 4 12-inch records, 180 gram, and a replica 7-inch UK single for Ugly and Gimme the Car. It includes Blister in the Sun, Please Do Not Go, Gone Daddy Gone, Kiss Off, and Add It Up, plus a trove of demos, rarities, and live sessions. New liner notes by David Frick, featuring interviews with Gordon Gano, Brian Ritchie, and Victor De Lorenzo. Lacquers cut by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. Wow. And remastered by Kevin. Limited to 5,000 copies. I think this is probably going to go fast. Anyway, it's kind of cool. It's got like a die cut sort of cover where the window is. And there's what the back sort of looks like. So, I don't know. Some people would probably be like, "That's the album they." I mean, obviously, that's if they're gonna do a Violent Femmes box set to commemorate an album, that's the one to do. Um, I don't know. I like the Violent Femmes, so and that's a good album. But in a perfect world, I think everybody has a favorite album of some sort, and for a good reason. A lot of them are extremely like well thought of, and that's one that I probably would not. I mean, I know a lot of people love it. I wouldn't have known. Yeah, there's going to be a box set for that one day, but if you can do Green Day Dookie box sets, why not? So okay, moving right along. So there are two Blue Note tone poets this week. The first one is Jackie McLean. This one's called Action, 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 or simply Action. It's really just one action. Charles Tolliver, Bobby Hutcherson, Cecil McBee, and Billy Higgins. The other one is Booker Irvin, and this one is called Textbook Tenor. And this features Woody Shaw, Booker Irvin, Kenny Barron, Jan Arnett, or Jan Arnett, and Billy Higgins. It's probably Jan, I don't know. Anyway, the two tone poets, mastered by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. He does all of the tone poet stuff. This series sounds superior, and I'm sure those are great. I am not aware of Kevin doing a bad record or a bad cut job. All right. Art Blakey, Caravan. This is now original jazz classics, OJCs. This is another series that has been kicked off by Concord Music and Kraft. This features Art Blakey, Curtis Fuller, Freddie Hubbard, Wayne Shorter, Cedar Walton, and Reggie Workman. And so there's that one. And then the other one this week, Cannonball Adderley, featuring Bill Evans. So the last OJC we got was Yusuf Lateef's Eastern Sounds, and it was very delayed. And now we're back to getting two at the same time, I think, like it was supposed to originally. But this one features Cannonball, Bill Evans, Percy Heath, and Connie Kay. And both of these were lacquers cut, all analog from the original master tapes by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio, pressed at RTI, one of the best pressing plants around in the world. All right. Everybody says those series sound fantastic. I haven't heard one complaint. We've been running the Blue Note now for Tone Poets, I think, 4 years, 5 years? Maybe 4 years, and then the OJC started about a year ago, and that gets very high praise. All right, new releases, like new albums. Liam Gallagher and John Squire. Well, the meeting of Manchester minds. You get Liam from Oasis and John from Stone Roses, and I believe Greg Kurstin produced this. He did one of Liam's other albums. Also worked with Foo Fighters a lot recently. Mixed by Mark Stent, who did the Bright Side mix of the Peter Gabriel album, plus a bunch of Mark has done lots of incredible work over the years. Both of those guys. Anyway, this features also Joey Waronker on drums, and then Greg pretty much plays everything that Liam and John don't do. So John Squire, Stone Roses, he has a very unique, iconic sort of guitar sound. And if you're not going to have the Oasis brothers, Liam and Noel, back together, this is also a very interesting collaboration. Once Noel decides that he wants to, get back together, maybe that'll change. But right now, this is sort of lighting the fire of maybe you guys should get back together. Although, really excited about this. This is going to be a good one. This is an exclusive white vinyl indie version. I'm sure they're sort of fairly limited, but anyway. We have some CDs. I think there are more on the way. So if you don't get a CD right away, don't be too sad. I'm sorry. There are more coming, but they were sort of limited. CDs, I don't know what's been going on there lately. It seems like they tend to make it just enough to cover like what they think the advance pre-orders might be, and then in some cases it can take weeks sometimes to get more of them. I think they're sort of like, well, we don't want to make too many and have them sitting around because they don't know what the response is going to be. I've been selling more CDs again lately, so go figure. Bruce Dickinson, his new solo record, The Mandrake Project. And so, one of the greatest metal vocalists of all time, features Afterglow of Ragnarok and Rain on the Graves. So new Bruce Dickinson record. There you go. Let's see. Also, Zach Sabbath, Doomed Forever, Forever Doomed. Zach Wild and company doing Black Sabbath covers. Kind of a cool cover here. This features Zach Wild, Blasco, and Joey C. Castillo. And songs featured are War Pigs, Paranoid, Planet Caravan, Iron Man, Electric Funeral, Hand of Doom, etc., etc. You can look this up online if you want. Let's see. I believe this band is from Philly. This is Sheer Mag, and this is their new record, Playing Favorites. And that's kind of a cool cover. It reminds me of like some sort of like an old Deep Purple cover or something like that. Let's see. This is on Third Man. So you might want to check out Sheer Mag. I think they're kind of like punky a little bit. Let's see. I could be wrong. Yard Act. This band is from England, and Where's My Utopia is the name of this record. This is getting a lot of buzz on the indie circuit as a really great album. I don't know why the vinyl is so expensive. It's in the like $40 and up range, and maybe it must be pressed in the UK or Netherlands, so it's basically an import on vinyl. When that happens, the prices of records sometimes go up $10 to $20, and it's sort of frustrating, especially when they're, shouldn't be happening. But Mannequin Pussy, their new album, I Got Heaven. I probably shouldn't show that for too long. Mannequin Pussy. This album is being played a lot on our local WXPN sort of station. Very good, what I heard, sort of also alternative rock. Clear vinyl with black smoke mixed in. 10 tracks. Go look this picture up online, or freeze frame it if I didn't wand it by too quickly. I don't want my video to get taken down, let's be honest. These are a lot of work. Everything, their new album, Mountainhead. This is a great sort of like post-modern, post-punk type. They're not punk. They're sort of an alternative band that uses a lot of electronics and sort of all sorts of different stuff. Their stuff is great. This is also put out by BMG, manufactured in Germany. This is the Crystal Lake Clear vinyl. They definitely have a following. Let's see. Stickmen, their album Tentacles. Stickmen features Tony Levin, who is the bassist for King Crimson, and it's done a lot with Peter Gabriel recently. Let's see. Stickmen's albums are filled with power, ethereal moods, and some of the most fascinating music in the world, says David Freshman. There's the back. It sort of has a King Crimson-y look to the cover too. There aren't any tracks under 5 minutes long. They're all around 6. Well, there's one that's about 5 minutes, but they're all about 5 to 7 minutes long. Yeah, another stellar release from this long-lived ensemble. Though the King Crimson influence is obvious and that comparison is unavoidable, these guys have made many great recordings that can't be categorized as mere copies. Check it out, all you prog fans. Okay, a record that came in a little late from last week, Glitterer, and this is their new record, Rationale. And this features Ned from Title Fight, and they definitely have their fan base too. So I've already had people asking for that. So that's here. Let's see. Ugh. Well, what week? It wouldn't be a week without a King Gizzard release. This is King Gizzard live at Bonnaroo in 2022. Double LP pressed on plutonium and magma colored vinyl. And that's quite a cover. Features Robot Stop, Hot Water, The Grim Reaper, Mars for the Rich, Hell, Planet B, Gaia, songs from like the Omnium period. In that year, or at least songs that they were working on for that too. Pretty cool. Let's see. Ooh, another Stevie Ray Vaughan sort of catalog reissue. This was the Martin Scorsese series that was done. He did a whole series of albums with this cover, and the Stevie Ray one was one of the most popular. Available for vinyl on the first time, limited edition of 2,500 individually numbered copies on translucent blue colored vinyl. Includes insert with pictures and liner notes. This features, here's the back here if you want to freeze frame that, but Slide Thing Live, All Your Love, I Miss Loving Live, Pride and Joy, Dirty Pool, Texas Flood, Hug You, Squeeze You Live, The Things That I Used to Do, Honeybee, Give Me Back My Wig, etc., etc. So I think it's more like the blues side of Stevie Ray. A little less of maybe the sort of poppier side that sometimes he would go towards. Let's see. Grateful Dead, Dick's Picks Volume 2. And these are really hard to come by, and they're very expensive, and they don't make very many of them. Hand-numbered edition, limited to 3,500 copies. This is number 2637. Let's see, remastered for vinyl by Jeffrey Norman from the original tapes for the first time ever. Doesn't say necessarily if, how they were done, but featuring a truly legendary Dark Star jam, lacquers cut by Clint Hawley and Dave Polster at Well Made Music. So there was a volume 1 came out last year very briefly, and it was extremely expensive. This is only 2 records, and it's around 70, 74. Slayer, a reissue of Rain and Blood. This is a RSD Essential, and it is clear with red splatter vinyl. So if you want your Slayer on a special color record, I believe it's the same pressing that they've been doing. Same thing with Pet Sounds, Beach Boys Pet Sounds. This is on Coke bottle clear vinyl, kind of a greenish clear. I'm sure it looks very pretty. This is one of the best albums of the 60s. Wouldn't It Be Nice is on here. God Only Knows, Caroline No, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times. It's a classic. This record gets some talk up in past terms now, just because it was sort of an influential record from a period. But this is from mid-aughts. Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, Up From Below. This album is on blue and black vinyl, extremely limited. I don't know if we're going to be able to get many more or any more of these, but let's see if I can find out what year. I can't remember. I want to say it was like around 2005, but maybe it's a little after that. Anyway, they sort of like hit kind of one of the guys, I think the guy was Edward Sharpe, was in like a band called We Are Scientists, maybe he still is, which was more of a kind of a new wavy band, and then this sort of took off. And I would say bands like the Lumineers have sort of eclipsed Edward Sharpe now as far as a band like that. But Karen Dalton, and this is a reissue of her first album. It's called It's So Hard to Tell Who's Going to Love You the Best. And world weary and filled with blues, Dalton's unsurpassed interpreter of death and emotional range was like no other. Recorded for Capitol in 1969, it spans generations of American songwriting, covering classics by Leadbelly, Fred Neil, and Tim Hardin. Light in the Attic did this, and newly remastered from original tapes by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. My God, does that guy ever sleep? He does everything. It's amazing. All right, and it's good too, so I can't complain. Uh, Music on vinyl, Freddie Hubbard. Second time I mentioned him today. This is his album Red Clay. He was on one of those other Blue Notes, or I think it was one of the OJCs I mentioned. Limited edition of 1,500 individually numbered copies on gold and red marble vinyl. This is probably one of Freddie's best solo records. Post Blue Note, this features Joe Henderson, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Lenny White. So a pretty stellar cast. 4 sort of long tracks there. All right. Let's see. Another jazz reissue, Thelonious Monk, 5 by Monk by 5. And this is on Destination Moon Records, number 75 of 500. An innovative and idiosyncratic pianist, Thelonious Monk has been hailed as one of bebop's founding figures. Let's see. It features the bright swing of the new Jackying and the more dissonant Played Twice, alongside engaging revisits of Straight No Chaser, I Mean You, and Ask Me Now. The interplay between Monk, cornetist Thad Jones, and saxophonist Charlie Rouse, especially noteworthy. Definitely worth investigating. Also features Art Taylor on drums and Sam Jones on bass. So it's got like sort of the Blue Note-y look of the cover. All right, Lonnie Liston Smith, and this is his live record. And this Flying Dutchman Records, 1977. So you're talking a little more like of a funk soul jazz hybrid type thing. I think the cover art and the photograph and all sort of makes that sort of clear. And hip hop reissue, KRS-One, Return of the Boom Bap. And this was what year? 30th anniversary, so 93. KRS-One was like a big deal then. And so I don't know. Some people who are like hip hop fans will be looking for that for sure. A few other things to show here. Ministry, their new album, Hopium for the Masses. The vinyl is on the way, but this is Al Jorgensen and company saying that it's going to be his last record, possibly, and he said that many times, but it's on Nuclear Blast Records. Walter Trout, his new album, Broken. And this features tracks with Beth Hart and Dee Snider. And he does sort of rough kind of electric blues. Big Big Train, this is their new reissue or new album, The Likes of Us, new studio album from the International Progressive Rock Collective. Right now I've only seen it on CD. There's also a deluxe edition on CD. Sean Lennon, his new album, Asterisms. And this features Yuka Honda, who's been in his band for a little while. And on the back, he's listed as Sean Ono Lennon. It's on Zadok Records, which is sort of more of a total indie vibe there. Piss Jeans, their new album, Half Divorced. I think you can find this on vinyl too, but yeah, they've had several records. This is on Sub Pop. Faye Webster, a new album from her, Underdressed at the Symphony. Looks like she's shopping for some kind of a dress, maybe a choir robe, I don't know. Oh look, there's patterns on the back, make your own. Underdressed at the Symphony. Faye Webster. All right, and Julian Lage, and he's a jazz guy, and this is his new album, Speak to Me. Let's see. Anything of note here? Eh, Joe Henry produced it. So, Madonna's brother-in-law. Uh, but Joe is a great sort of singer-songwriter. So I'm sure this has kind of a rootsier vibe for a jazz record, probably. And 3 Overkill reissues on CD, WFO, I Hear Black, and Horoscope. So they've reissued all the I think that's all the records that came out last fall on vinyl are now out on CD too. So if you want a digital copy of Overkill, a good sounding one on CD, there you go. Okay. So, as far as recommends this week, I'm kind of like, what haven't I recommended that I'm sort of like drawn to and have been drawn to for a long time. And this week I just decided to choose another 80s record because I know a lot about the 80s. I lived through it. And one of my favorite records of that era. And this band, I could have chosen probably 5 different records. And I decided to go with this one, which might not be everybody's choice. But for me, it speaks to me in a way because it was the one that really I went from being mildly interested and sort of like liking some of their stuff to being completely obsessed. And that would be Some Great Reward, which is the album from 1985 originally. Um, some of the tracks from this were sort of previewed in 84. The song People Are People appears on this record. And I love this cover image because I think it actually is very indicative of what the music sounds like. It's an electronic pop record, little to no acoustic instruments used. It's all keyboards and samplers, and the sounds that they get are amazing. They've used a lot of the sampling technology, so they created a lot of sounds instead of using just presets that were on a synthesizer. I get sort of irritated a little bit with the fact when people sort of like to criticize the 80s as like everything is like synthesized and it all sounds the same and whatever. And I'm like, no, not at all. You're just listening to the same records that were played on the radio all the time. And a lot of those records were made using the presets that came on all of the keyboards of the time. So if you have sounds that sound very thin or cloying or something like that, that's just usually because the band or whoever was involved with that was trying to make the records fast, get them recorded, get them out to the public, and be able to tour and all that. Depeche Mode did that too, in a sense, but they also did a lot more experimenting with sound. And I think by the time Alan Wilder joined the band, and he was a full-time member by the time they got to this album, he brought a sense of the different kinds of sounds that they could go even further with using the technology that they had. So this album, People Are People, came out on as a single early in I believe 1984, and it did very well. It was a top 10 hit. Well, I think it at least got around number 10 in the US, so it did very well on this side of the pond, and was also popular in England and other places. Ironically, the band doesn't really, for a long time they didn't like that song and they wouldn't play it. I think because they thought of it as like almost too cheesy, or like some sort of an albatross that like they had to shed because it put them on the map in America in a way that like made them seem too poppy or something. It's just a great pop song, and the words are very simplistic in a way, yes, but they also are very still relevant today. And so I think, and they've started playing that song a lot more in the last decade. And so I think that they kind of realized, like, that song really isn't nearly as as much as we should try to escape it as we did. But in the U.S., there was a kind of an album that came out that had that song featured on it early, with a bunch of older songs. It was kind of a stopgap. I don't have the picture here, but if you look up "People Are People" online, you probably see a picture of them sort of huddled around something in a factory in black and white. And then it officially appeared on this as the full album, and it was a slightly longer version that they put on this too. So it's not really the radio version, but anyway, so this record starts out with the track "Something to Do," and that song has a kind of driving rhythm. It uses a lot of really kind of odd and interesting choices of notes. And I say that too because going back to the earliest record, say Speak and Spell, which was 1981, the big hit from that was the song Just Can't Get Enough, which is a pure pop song. And it's a great song, but it was written by Vince Clarke, who eventually went into Yazoo, and Erasure. And it had a much more kind of like catchy, boppy sound to it. And not like Vince isn't capable of doing darker stuff, but his stuff tended to be a little more sort of direct in a tonal. I'm talking music theory now, in a tonal sort of sense. Martin Gore's writing was much more sort of angular and ambiguous tonally, and he sort of, between him and Alan, I think they brought in a lot more sort of like classical sensibilities and used a lot more sort of that the darker sounds and the odd notes, and were influenced by other sort of bands around at the time, like the Cabaret Voltaires and Einstürzende Neubauten, and people who were like doing more of the sort of industrial kind of sounding music. So really what Depeche Mode was in this time was sort of a bridge between the pop and the industrial type artists. And People Are People uses a lot of very kind of percussive industrial sounds of like grinding machines and stuff like that. And done to an extremely effective musical end. So Something to Do, the first track, is more of a sort of a driving, quick kind of song, and it always has this very croony vocal from Dave Gahan, which I think you kind of get on this album too, him really coming into his own as a lead vocalist. And both he and Martin are incredible lead vocalists, and you've got two of the best of the decade in the same band on the same albums. And so Dave kind of gave this sort of a kind of sexy croony vibe, even though like the song has this kind of punchy driving rhythm. And then the second song, Lie to Me, is just it's almost like, I would say, sort of a little bit of a masterpiece of the era, because it's got this sort of hushed quality that's very um, time ticking sort of in the rhythm, and kind of got almost like a very quietly seductive quality to it. The tones, the synth tones, are unlike any other band really of this time. So that's what makes them sort of unique, I think. But Lie to Me is an incredible song. That's followed by People Are People on side A. And the last two songs on side A, you get It Doesn't Matter, which has just this beautiful kind of shimmery effect of all of the sort of like clingy little, clanky little bell tones and stuff. And then that song's in a sort of a major key. Um, and I believe that's a Martin Gore vocal, and it's just a hauntingly beautiful ballad, and it sort of also sets the standards for the beautiful ballads to come that Martin Gore would take. Usually Dave would do the more rocky kind of driving songs, and the sort of darker, sinister type songs, and Martin did the more sort of heartfelt kind of stuff. All right, so not like it's not all heartfelt. And then Stories of Old, the last song on that side, is kind of a more brief type song, uses again some interesting like bell and choral effects and whatever, and it almost has an effect of like an old German like uh, beer hall kind of sound to it, with some of the woodwind kind of sounds that they use and all. And then side two begins with a ballad, Somebody, which has no drums. It's just basically solo piano and Martin singing, and his voice is just so beautifully haunting on that track. And apparently, he recorded it in the nude by himself in the studio. He just wanted to be like, I want to be completely at one with the music, and it's such a touching, beautiful song. And that's followed immediately by one of the most clangy, bangy songs on the record, a big hit in England, more of a club hit in the US, Master and Servant, which is sort of what the name describes, and has some of the most incredible sampling and cutting of rhythms, and just an oral feast for the ears, as far as like the different vocals pinging off of each other. Uses both Martin and Dave's vocals, and probably the other guys too. But and then if you want, it's more sort of like a kind of a haunting, measured kind of tone. Brings it down a little bit after Master and Servant. It does have its sort of upbeat type parts, and talks sort of about building a relationship is sort of like building factories and stuff like that. And the last track, Blasphemous Rumors, very controversial song for the era. Very catchy and beautiful, but still has a beat, has very a dark tone to it, and sort of one of the first songs that says Depeche Mode are unafraid to go into lyric territory that you don't often see, addressing things like the church and its sort of role in the destruction of lives, and mentions sort of suicide and things like that. What an incredible pop song. And then it ends with this sort of weird, kind of breathy outro that sort of would be the kind of thing that could harken back to like the Beatles and Her Majesty on their early, was it Sergeant Pepper? No, Abbey Road. So anyway, I highly recommend, if you've never heard Some Great Reward. The funny thing about this is that when I worked in a record store back in the late 80s and early 90s, when I first was starting this, we had stacks and stacks of this album sitting around on cassettes and CDs, that people, it was part of the Warner Super Saver series. Other things on that would have been like Yazoo's Upstairs at Eric's. I mean, we had tons of those records. They were sort of mid-priced records at that point because, well, in Depeche Mode's case, they went on to become international superstars with albums like Violator, which is another one of my favorites, and Black Celebration, and Music for the Masses, and on and on. But so for a time, this was sort of like, hey, get acquainted with Depeche Mode and pick up this cassette or CD that's like really popular. It doesn't cost you a fortune and whatever. So they sold a lot of copies of this album that way. So I think a fair amount of them made it out into the public. But it's worth hearing if you haven't. Sort of in the way that, like, U2 had certain formula albums that got them to where they eventually went. The Cure had some like that. So anyway, it's sort of like the journey of a career. But this is an album, I think, especially with Blasphemous Rumors and a couple other songs here, that sort of set the tone for the darker side of Depeche Mode that they'd kind of dabbled with before, but it really was like, okay, Black Celebration came after this, and then it was like a little bit more of the sort of industrial club S&M kind of stuff brought into the mix, but such incredible songwriting. And there's a reason that Martin Gore is lauded for being one of the top writers of his generation, and that's because his songs were so haunting and unique. All right. That being said, thank you so much for watching that. That was a little bit longer than normal recommends, but sometimes when I feel like I know an album inside and out, I want to discuss it without getting too technical. So go check out Some Great Reward and have a great weekend. Thanks so much. Peace. Love you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And take care. And I'll see you next week, March 8th. Got Norah Jones, Judas Priest, Rolling Stones, Alice Cooper. There's just a lot coming. So, and Record Store Day, April 20th, 420. Don't forget it. All right. Take care. See you soon. Peace.